CEO Betsy Gardner-Eckford.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Betsy Gardner-Eckford. I'm delighted that you could join us on this call today. And I thank my team for doing a fantastic job of getting this type of programming up and running so quickly. First and foremost, we want to thank Mayor Jerry Demings, his Chief of Staff, Roseanne Harrington, and certainly we'll be thanking Dylan in an introduction coming up. I do want to point out that I believe we've got Representative Stephanie Murphy's local Chief of Staff, Lauren Allen, on the call with us. And I know that we've got staff or herself, Representative Escamani, on the call with us. We are grateful for our collaborations with our elected officials. If I've left out an elected official on the call, if you could put it in the chat, we'd love to recognize you. And we know that you're working really hard for the citizens of Winter Park right now. And we're extremely grateful for the ability that we have to collaborate with all of you so well. The Chamber's mission is to convene people and ideas for the benefit of our businesses and our community. And a week ago, I wasn't sure how we were going to deliver on that promise to our community. And because of the board and the team that we have, we've been able to pivot quickly to trying to give our community a deeper flow of information about things as they're happening in real time, to help people make the best possible decisions they can to secure their businesses, which is why this series exists. So I'm delighted that we've been able to bring this content to you in the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic. So Dylan Shott is with us today, and he's the Assistant County Attorney for Orange County. And he is originally from Central Florida. He graduated from the University of Florida, Levin College of Law. So we always like having a Gator as one of our speakers. We're delighted that you could be with us today because I know many of our members have questions, Dylan, about the executive order. And I know that a favorite phrase of lawyers is included but not limited to. And so I think we'll be talking a little bit about that today. At this point, I want to hand it over to Dylan Shott, and thank you so much for spending time with us this afternoon to discuss Mayor Demings' executive order.
Yep, thank you for having me. I'm Dylan Shott. As was mentioned, I'm an assistant county attorney for Orange County. I'm happy to be here today because I know this is a stressful time for a lot of people, especially business owners in our community. And I know that this decision was not made lightly. Mayor Demings and this administration really value a relationship with our business community. So I'm happy to be here as a resource to answer any questions anyone might have. I think reading the order is really helpful, and I think there's a frequently asked questions document that's been posted and is on the county website, and going through those frequently asked questions is really helpful as well, to clear up any sort of questions you might have during this uncertain time. That said, I also know that anytime sort of a regulation is passed or anything like that, there are always gray areas. And generally with this order, we're erring on the side of caution in those gray areas and trying to keep businesses open that can be open and that can be captured by the exceptions in the order. But with those gray areas, there's not always a clear yes or no answer. And so, even today, we're still doing more research and still looking into every unique scenario that arises. And to that effect, we'll be continually updating our frequently asked questions document that's posted on the county website and shared with you in Zoom throughout this process. And we may also be at a future time amending the order to add certain things. That's certainly an option. So if there is an issue that arises, in this webinar or in the future, that's always an option too. So thank you. Thanks for having me.
So Dylan, some of the questions we wanted to start with, and I'll give you just some specifics. Someone who is not in the essential services list, but provides a product or service that serves that business. That's one of the questions that we've gotten asked. Other questions are around construction work continuing. So if you might handle a couple of those specific questions, and then we can move on to other parts of the order. But I think this definition of basic needs and serving people who serve basic needs is something we want to try to get some clarity on.
Yeah, so that's a question we've gotten several times today, actually, and the answer is that businesses that provide supplies or services for essential businesses can remain open. So, for example, I've spoken with a business recently that provides printing. It's a printing company, provides signs, graphics, and visual communications to hospitals and architects and engineers and that sort of thing. And we have deemed them an essential business, and therefore they may remain open as such. So to that effect, it's a case-by-case basis, but generally, if you're a business that provides services to other essential businesses, you can remain open. And then to answer your second question about construction, construction is specifically exempt in the order. I believe it's section 2B28 that allows construction sites or deems construction sites essential businesses and allows them to remain open as well.
Okay. And then talking about travel, can you specifically let us know, I've got employees that are not working at the office, for example, but every now and then one of them will have to go to the office to pick something up. What would be the procedure for them interpreting or violating the interpretation of the order by going to do that? Is that allowed? And if they do that and someone pulls them over, what would that look like? Or what are the practical aspects of doing that?
Yep, sure. So it's my understanding that you're asking about employees traveling to non-essential businesses that
Correct.
provide non-essential services. Okay.
Because my interpretation of the order is that they're allowed to go to the office, for example, to collect items to enable them to work, but they're not meant to be reporting to the office if they're not on the essential businesses list.
Right. So once this order goes into effect, they really shouldn't be traveling to or from non-essential workplaces. Ideally, the businesses would have whatever they need to have in order for people to work from home in place prior to this order going into effect, and we still have over 24 hours until then. And I think that's one of the reasons we made this effective 48 hours after execution. And to answer your question about getting pulled over, I mean, I've spoken to our communications department, and they've dealt directly with Orange County Sheriff's Office, and the impression we're getting from OCSO is that they're not out to arrest people or jail people for violating this order. So that's not their intent. The intent of this order is to make people aware of the severity and the necessity for people to stay home. So that's not the intent. Now, that said, the order is mandatory, and if OCSO deputies pull you over and you're violating the order, that's certainly within their authority.
Okay, and switching gears to something a bit more on the practical side for those of us who will be at home, how will going to the grocery store be regulated, if at all, and will we be allowed to go whenever we want or need to go?
Yeah, so Section 1 of the order talks about travel, and it essentially orders everyone to stay home unless they have to travel for a necessary activity or there's essential travel. And essential travel is sort of defined in that section, and it includes obtaining food and going to grocery stores and things like that. So the order's to stay home, but you're certainly permitted to leave your house in order to go to the grocery store.
Okay, and there's no limitations on how much you can do that.
That's right. No, there's no limitations on obtaining food or anything like that.
Okay, I know I was on a call earlier today about critical infrastructure, and I know that there are many people that participate in securing our critical infrastructure. I know in provision 35 of this, it says that those are essential people. Could you speak a little bit to people who are critical infrastructure workers? Will they be given any kind of special provisions or anything that we should know about in terms of critical infrastructure?
Yeah, so you're right. 35 talks about critical infrastructure. It's a list or a category that's established by the federal government, and we included a very broad provision in the order to ensure that anyone who could be classified as a worker or employed in critical infrastructure sectors are permitted to travel to and from work. So they are exempt from it's deemed an essential business, so they would be exempt from this order mandating them to stay home. We also provided a link to the federal government's list of that identifies critical infrastructure, and so people reading the order at home can access that link and find out specifically whether their sector is included in that provision.
And the short form of that is CISA.gov. It's C as in Charlie, I as in Indigo, S as in Sam, A as in Alpha, .gov, and that there's a / identifying critical infrastructure during COVID-19. We'll send out a follow-up to this with all those links in there. I want to speak to 35D, where people have been recommended to stay 6 feet apart and to group size no less than 10 people. Are there areas in which you think that's going to be difficult to achieve? Are there recommendations that have come out of the mayor's office in terms of what that looks like in a practical sense? Anything you can do to kind of elucidate 35D for us?
Yep, so you're right. There are issues that can arise with trying to abide by those recommendations. So for example, the keeping at least 6 feet apart and limiting group size to less than 10 people. One thing that comes to mind is takeout and delivery services. It'll be difficult to deliver food to people without coming within 6 feet of them. So really it's a matter of practicality, and we just ask people to or urge people to follow those guidelines as best as possible. If, for example, a delivery man could leave food outside of someone's apartment and someone could pick it up and there would have to be no interaction, that would be great. I mean, but it's, again, a case-by-case basis. As of now, aside from those recommendations where people try to stay 6 feet apart and limit group sizes to less than 10 people, I'm not aware of any other guidelines that have been set forth. Now, I was on a call with I think it was OEP this morning, Orlando maybe Economic Partnership, I'm not sure. And they had asked a similar question, and one of the things we had mentioned was possibly getting some guideline from the Florida Department of Health in Orange County as to whether they have any recommendations or guidelines on how these businesses and people traveling that may be exempt under this order, what steps they can take to ensure that they're healthy and they're safe. So that's something we're still looking into, but I do believe we're going to get something from either our health services director from the county or the Florida Department of Health, the state in Orange County.
I think that's going to be very helpful guidance. I know there are people that will be happy to see things like golf has been listed by name as one of the things you're encouraged to do for exercise, and yet there are closures of country clubs mandated in the order. Can you think of any other areas where there could be recommendations and then maybe something in the order that might make that difficult to achieve. I know that you all had time pressure to get this out, and I congratulate you on getting it out as quickly as you did. But are there any areas where you think there may be some tricky or blurry areas that might be confusing for people in the order?
Yeah, so you're right. One of the physical exercise activities that's allowed is golfing. I don't know that we specifically mandated golf courses and country clubs to be closed. We did not exempt them, so that was something of an oversight. But I believe that is one of the things we're going to interpret as, actually, let me rephrase that. I spoke with the county attorney maybe an hour ago, and he said we're going to allow golf courses to stay open, given that golfing was included in there as a basic need or physical activity for people to, or exercise activity for people to engage in. So golf courses actually will not be closed under this order. And I think I mentioned in my introduction or opening statement where I talked about possibly issuing an amended order. That may be a clarification that we include.
Yeah, in section 2A, you have country clubs listed, but you don't have golf courses listed by name. So I certainly don't want to be splitting hairs about any of this. And I think you guys have done a fantastic job. But if it helps you later on to clarify that, I just wanted to bring that to your attention, because I think it may end up confusing some people in terms of what's the difference between a golf course and a country club. Maybe it only confines to the dining aspects of that. And not the golf aspect of it.
Right. I think if we amend the order, it would specify golf courses, because I think there are aspects of country clubs that may not be essential, like you mentioned, dining in services. So I think golf courses would be accepted there. I know you mentioned other areas that might be sort of problematic or pose issues, and another thing that we're looking at is what I call the minimum basic operations for a business to function. I spoke with a business owner today who said he needs to go to, he's a non-essential business, so his businesses will be closed under this order, but he says he needs to go to work in order to make payments, to conduct his payroll process. And so that's something that was not included in the original order. And so that's another area that we're looking at maybe including in an amended order in the future.
And do you all have a time scale for an amended order, or are you just going to take it as it comes?
Well, it's in the works now. We have an attorney in our office who's working on amending it now. And certainly, as far as I know, it'll be either today or tomorrow. I mean, the goal would most certainly be to get it amended before the order goes into effect.
Okay, and I think, I want to point out, I think this is a little bit like stapling Jell-O to the wall. I don't even know how y'all are keeping up with all this at the moment. And I wanted to congratulate Orange County on kind of leading the way. Do you have a sense of where other counties are going to fall at the moment in terms of other orders coming from, say, Seminole or Osceola or any of our neighboring counties?
So I know Miami-Dade, Broward, and Alachua have passed similar ordinances. I think Osceola just passed theirs this afternoon. Okay. And I believe the city of Tampa is passing one as well. I haven't heard anything from Seminole County, so I don't know. I haven't spoken to them, as I'm not sure what they're planning to do at the moment.
And then speaking to the broader piece of the state, do you feel that there's anything with the executive orders coming out of the governor's office that will make this either easier to work with or more cumbersome? Because I know there's a lot of orders circulating at the moment.
So our order, I think it's section 6 on page 6, mentions the governor's office and executive orders that may be issued by the governor's office. And, we don't want to issue anything that conflicts with the state. So to that end, no, there wouldn't be any conflicts, but as to what the governor does in the future, I couldn't say.
Okay. At this point, I'm going to open it up for your questions. I know we have a lot, and I'm going to ask Amy to run our questions function. Lots of given information here, and we feel so lucky to have Dylan here, who's really on the ground, kind of picking this up and running with it in real time. So I'm going to hand it over to Amy to run our questions section.
Thank you, Betsy. So we have a couple questions in the chat box already. And if you have a question, please do raise your hand at this time and we'll get to you one by one. First, Lauren Allen, I have unmuted you and you're welcome to ask your question now.
Hi, everyone. I know you mentioned that ideally businesses would be able to work from home and that we've all had 48 hours in advance to make preparations for that. But I was wondering if it was deemed essential for us to go to our place of work to pick up mail.
So again, I think that gets into the language that we will be adding into an amended order, most likely the minimum basic operations language, where if you own or work at a non-essential business, you know, there are certain basic things you have to do in order to keep your business functioning. And so in this order, as it's written now, I don't know that it specifically permits non-essential workers to travel to and from a non-essential business. That said, we should have an amended order that would allow that, or that language that would permit that.
Thank you.
Mike Smith, go ahead with your question. You've been unmuted. I think you may have yourself muted on your end. Okay, we're having a little trouble with Mike, but I'll ask his question. His question is, what about liquor stores? How does this pertain to liquor stores, breweries, things like that?
Yeah, and so that gets back to, I think, a question we had earlier about any conflicts with the governor's orders. And I think it's Executive Order 20-71, where the governor specifically said nothing in his orders were to be read as, you know, shutting down retail liquor or alcohol stores. And we included a provision in Section 6 on page 6 of our order that that mentions that as well. So it said nothing in our order should be interpreted as preventing retail or wholesale stores or vendors that currently sell sealed containers of alcoholic beverages for off-premises consumption from continuing such sales for off-premises consumption. And again, that's language that was lifted directly from the governor's order. So liquor stores are fine to continue operating under this order.
Thank you so much. Okay, on to the next question. Tracy, you are welcome to ask your question. You may need to unmute yourself on your end.
I think I've unmuted myself.
There you go. Yes, we're good.
Oh, good. Okay. I was just wondering about, you know, like city meetings or, you know, municipal meetings. Are cities still having meetings, or are they able to schedule special meetings?
So I think it's going to depend. It'll vary on jurisdiction to jurisdiction. So what the Winter Park commissioners are doing, or the Orlando City commissioners and the Orange County commissioners, all might be a little bit different. I know for Orange County, our meetings were trying to transition to allowing like county commissioners to establish a quorum without having to be physically present. So there may be they may be able to video chat in or audio chat and conduct a meeting that way. Now our order creates an exception for the public attending public meetings or going to any other government functions. And I think there's a provision in our frequently asked questions document that mentions a lot of Orange County buildings will be closed to the public. So I think it's just going to be a case-by-case basis. But should a public meeting be open, you are not prohibited from attending under our order.
Okay, thank you. Next question is, can you please speak to real estate, both residential and commercial?
Yes, so this is a question we've gotten a lot today, actually, and one I've spoken with the county attorney about, and it's our interpretation of the order that real estate, most of the real estate industry, every specific question that has been fielded to me at least, has been deemed an essential business. So that would include real estate agents, that would include insurance contractors, that would include property appraisers, that would include licensed home inspectors. So those are the specific employees and businesses I've spoken to today, and I can tell you we have deemed all of those essential businesses that may remain open.
Okay, thank you. Next question, would you consider allowing use of tennis courts?
So it's really not up to me. I kind of just help draft or edit these orders. I don't actually make policy decisions as to what is included and what is not included. So that would be a question for your county commissioner or the county mayor or county administration, and they'll have to make that determination at their level.
Okay, a follow-up note to that is the question is about tennis courts located at country clubs. So I guess that sort of speaks to this follow-up clarification that may come out in the future, but just sharing that remainder of the question.
Right. So this isn't an issue that's come up. I know we've specifically mentioned golfing, and so I know golf courses are permitted to stay open, but we didn't specifically list tennis as a physical activity or exercise that would be an exemption to the stay-at-home order. So as of now, as it's written, I don't know that tennis is open for that, but that may be something we include separately in an amended order. But right, as it's written, right, country clubs are closed, and if the tennis court is a part of the country club, then presumably tennis courts would also be closed.
Okay, thank you. Another question, and I think this has been partially answered, but I'm going to put it out there anyway. I own my own business and I own the building. My staff is working remotely, but is there any reason why I could not come into my office to work, to pick up mail, pay bills, address things that are not in the cloud, etc.?
So I mean, the context for this question is that this has been deemed a non-essential business, I'm assuming. And to that end, right, I think you're right. We have addressed it earlier in that as it's written now, I don't think a non-essential employee or non-essential owner of a non-essential business would be permitted to go to their business under this order. But like I mentioned before, I'm fairly certain we'll be issuing an amended order soon, within the next 24 hours or so, that would authorize non-essential business owners to perform minimum basic operations like going to their non-essential business to check mail, pay employees or vendors and that kind of thing.
Okay, thank you. Next question from the chat box from Julie Von Weller. Regarding your Q&A for City Commission meetings, are those supposed to be reserved for essential or emergency business, or can they be on whatever the city wants to meet on? I'm
sorry, I don't understand the question. Could you repeat it?
I'm reading the question as, are there any restrictions on city commission meetings being on what they should be focused on right now? Like, for example, on their agenda, should they only have emergency or essential business items, or is it recommended that they are able to have any of their normal agenda items on there?
Again, I think this will vary from jurisdiction to jurisdiction on what each commission decides to address at their meetings. I can tell you we had a meeting on Tuesday in the Orange County Commissioners, and it addressed everyday functions that we would normally have on a normal agenda. I don't think there's any restrictions on what commissioners can and cannot do. They, you know, sort of run their own commission meetings however they want. So if they need to address an everyday item to ensure that their local government is functioning properly, I don't see why they wouldn't be able to do that.
Okay, thank you. Next question. As a private school, do staff still go to work? Students and teachers are not on campus anymore. What about staff?
Yeah, okay, so our order, if you look on page 5, it's section 2C. It states that our order does not affect or limit the operations of any educational institution, whether public or private, except that the private education institution should, you know, make a concerted effort to abide by the prohibitions of or restrictions of any county, municipal, state, or federal order. So, for example, the maintaining a distance of 6 feet apart from other employees. So, in short, no, our order doesn't affect private educational institutions.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I think we've addressed all the questions. If you have an additional question, please raise your hand now through Zoom or type it in the chat box, and we'd be happy to call on you.
Amy, can you remind people how to raise their hand in case they joined us late?
Yes, absolutely. So whether you're on your computer or on your phone in the Zoom app, if you go to the bottom of your screen, sort of hover on the bottom portion of your screen, a banner will pop up with a raise hand option. Oh, we've got one. Okay. I have just unmuted you. Go ahead with your question.
I think the mute button might still be on.
Yeah.
Oaks and Lauren, you can go ahead with your question.
You should be open now.
Hi, Lola here from Umi on Park
Japanese.
Avenue, Japanese restaurant. We were just wondering if you guys have any recommendations as far as scheduling. We are just opening for dinner from 4 to 8:30 p.m. So we were wondering, yeah, do you have any recommendations as far as scheduling goes?
By scheduling, I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Operating hours.
Operating hours. So, no, I mean, there's nothing in the order that would necessarily limit your operating hours. There is an order out there that implements a curfew from 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. But that said,
we cannot not even penny from them.
Okay, thank you very much.
No, I'm sorry. I was just looking here at the order, looking for a for an exception for restaurants. So I don't see one. Well, yeah, there's an exception for individuals commuting to and from places of employment.
Okay.
So presumably, you know, that would be fine. So our order doesn't impact restaurants. It deems restaurants an essential business and permits them to stay open. But restaurants are still subject to the limitations of state orders. And I know the governor issued Executive Order 20-71, which ordered all restaurants and food establishments to suspend on-premises food consumption for customers. So it's my understanding that the state has issued an order that limits restaurants to takeout or delivery services only.
Right. That's exactly what we're doing, following the order. And I have one more question, please, if you'll permit me. We also have an employee who's traveling back and forth during our hours of operation from Kissimmee. Does he need a letter of consent in case he does get pulled over driving back and forth to work?
So this is a question we've gotten a lot today, actually, and it wouldn't hurt if you're a business owner and you have an employee and who's providing an essential service, and you're an essential business and they're traveling back and forth from work to home, which they are permitted to do under the order. It wouldn't hurt as a business owner to provide them with a letter that says, you know, this is my employee, this is the essential business that we operate, you know, he's traveling to and from work. So in the event that an employee were to be pulled over, he could show that to a police officer, and hopefully that would clear it up.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Dylan, to clarify, an employer could write a note in such instance for an employee who worked for a non-essential business, technically speaking, but one that supported essential business operations. Is that correct?
So if you're a business that supports or supplies or, you know, ships or provides products to an essential business, you are deemed an essential business.
Okay.
So in that sense, you would be an essential business.
Okay.
So at this time, I'm not seeing any additional questions. So this will be our last call for questions. Raise your hand or type in the chat box if you would like to ask your question now. Otherwise, sorry, one moment. Okay, I've just been alerted that Anna Escamani, who's on the line, did want to remind everyone that it's dine-in only, as was just brought up after the question came up. So dine-in only, I'm sorry, no dine-in, only to go or takeout options available. Just clarifying that from Representative Anna Escamani. And with that, Betsy, I think that's our last question. So I'll turn it back over to you.
Dylan, we're extremely grateful to you, and it's clear to see that you're not going to get a moment's rest here in the coming days. We're so grateful to you for taking time out of your busy schedule to make yourself and your expertise available to our community and our members. We want to thank again Mayor Deming's office, especially his Chief of Staff, Roseanne Harrington. We want to thank Lauren Allen from Representative Stephanie Murphy's office, certainly Representative Anna Escamani herself for being on the call. And we'd like for you to be reminded that we're doing these webinars every day at 4 p.m. We have a newsletter that's coming out every day at midday with up-to-date briefings. We will have a webinar next week on the Senate aid package that just came through. Many of you know that's a 1,500-page bill, so we'll be wading through that in the coming days and helping to condense and boil down what that means for your business. So we urge you to follow us on social media, on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and we would love for you to subscribe to our newsletter. If you haven't done that, you can log on to winterpark.org, and all it takes is filling in your email into a small box, and we'll get our daily briefing to you, which covers what's going on in Tallahassee and Washington that may affect your business, and then local rules and regulations like the one we're talking about today, business closures, amended hours, and then also letting people know what services and resources are available to our community during this time. As always, I'm incredibly grateful to our team of amazing professionals who help us do work for our community that's valuable. And I want to thank you all for spending time with us today. Remember that we're on hand to assist you, to answer your questions. You may reach us by clicking on the About section, staff on our website at winterpark.org. Don't hesitate to reach us. Thank you for being with us today, and I hope that you all stay safe and well.